Welcome to user training for the Cloud DPE Development Studio. In this session, we will complete the setup of reference and detail tables based on the healthcare data we downloaded from the CMS website. These tables will enable us to be more productive in the performance of analytical tasks and will enable others to use Studio to easily set up queries for whatever investigation they may want to pursue. In the previous session, we completed the setup of physician and HCPCS reference tables. This is the HCPCS reference seed we were working with at the end of the last session. The final table we want to produce from our CMS data is the detailed utilization of the procedure codes or HCPCS codes by the physicians for both years, 2012 and 2013. So we have reference files for the physician data and for the HCPCS descriptions. So those parts of the data we can eliminate and just bring in the detailed statistics along with keys to relate to the HCPCS descriptions and provider information. So the one thing we might notice about this data is that it has in it some average and standard deviation measures for the allowed amount and the billed amount, and which is called submitted amount, and the paid amount here. The paid amount is here. And what it doesn't have is the total amount, but it does have the count of services here, the line service count. So if we multiply the average amount by the service count, by the line count, then we will get the total amount, which is what we want to do in our C to produce the detailed data. And that way it will be ready for analysis as opposed to having to repeat that calculation in every analytical seed we produce. So we're going to make another seed, and I'm going to call this still. I'm going to call it CMS data mining. Although I think we know pretty much what we want to do in this case. I made a mistake here. Seeing a real life data mining exercise here. Okay, so I'm going to bring in the table. I add all columns. And we will bring in the NPI, the place of service. Whoops, I need to hold my control key down to do that. The place of service, the HCPCS code, the Medicare participation indicator. Remember, we decided we needed that in the detail, that it was not part of the provider information, not a constant. And then the line service account, the Benny unique count would be good. That's the number of Bennies that were serviced with this procedure, with this HCPCS. And this is the number of days, Benny days, the number of days that beneficiaries were serviced. And then we'll need the average allowed amount, the average charge amount, the average paid amount, and the year. Okay. Now I'm going to add 3 calculated fields, and I will call those the allowed amount, billed amount, forgetting I have my cap key down, and the paid amount. Again. Okay. The formula for these are very simple, and one is the line service count times the average allowed amount, the line service count times the submitted charge amount, and the line service count times the paid amount. average paid amount. Okay. One thing I'm also going to do is reorder these fields normally appear with the billed amount prior to the allowed amount. So I'm just going to move the billed amount above it, because billed, allowed, or paid is how these amounts appear in many databases. Okay, so now I believe we're ready to introduce our output file. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to just copy the name of the file that was the input. I could have also copied it from the input name here. And now I'm going to add an output. Control C. Whoops, I meant Control V. Let me go back and do that right. Copy. And now add an output. Control V. And we're going to just call this utilization. Gotta take my caps off. So physician HCPCS utilization. And now for the output, I really don't need these fields, so I can delete these fields from the output. You'll notice this does not delete them from the input. So if we go back to the input, they're still there. It only deletes them from the output. So we have the NPI, the participant indicator, the place of service, the HCPCS, and line service count. I think that's about right, except we probably want to move the year to the last position also, like that. And that would just simply run this. And this will give us a much smaller table with the pre-calculated total amounts that we will probably use in our analyses. And here we are. As you can see, this is a much smaller now. If we look at the size, let's just look at it real quick. Do a refresh here, and we'll see the physician HCPCS utilization is 426 megabyte, which is much smaller than the 2.5 gigabytes. That's the size of the 2 years file. So this will be a lot faster to work with, although it's fast in any respect, because we're talking about a difference of seconds, but this is more convenient to use in this case. Okay. So one final thing is to save our work here. What I want to do is I'm going to copy this, the name of this table, and I'm going to use it as part of the name of the seed. I'm going to just, since the data mining seed isn't any different than the final seed that we use to produce the detail, I'm going to just do a save as and change this here and save it as such. Okay, now I'm going to close these tables here that we have open, and there is one final change I want to make to one of the seeds that we produced. I'm going to open up the physician reference seed, and you will notice that this field here is called last organization name, and what it is, here I'll show this to you for real. You'll see that in cases where the provider is an organization, here like this county health center, the whole name is in this first field. When it's a physician, a person's name, then it's only the last name, and then we have the first and the middle initial and so on. So I want to produce a single field that is just the provider name, and where it will be this. If it has only this field, then I want to use it. If it's broken up into the person's name, I want to use that and say use the last name, comma, first name, middle initial, and so on. All right. So I'm going to go back to the physician reference seed, and in the first process, add a varchar, a string variable, and in looking at this, it has to be 70, 90, 100 should do it. So I'm gonna make this 100 characters long, and just call it. And I'm gonna keep the caps on here to call it provider name. And the formula for that will be if, take my caps off, if, and I'm going to use a little trick here that says if the length of the, and just out of form, trim of the first name is greater than 0, then the last name plus comma space plus the first name plus space plus the last name, the middle initial, else the last name only. Okay. In the second process, we can simply bring that in. And also, perhaps in the output, we want to move that up to right after the, in fact, right after the year, perhaps here. So let me move that to the third position in the output. And in the physician reference, I will bring it in and also move it up to the second position, this time in the input, but I also have to do it in the output, because doing it in the input does not automatically move it in the output. Okay, now I'm simply going to rerun all processes here, and it gave me the message that I had the table open, the physician reference table open. I'm going to tell it to close it, and it will go through and recreate these two physician reference tables with the provider name included, which will be a lot more convenient when we do analyses. We will have only one field to bring in to add to the report. And there we have it. The provider name, as you can see here, it has the last name first, middle initial, and down here where it's simply an organization name, then it includes that. Now, one thing, of course, we really don't need here is that we could simply eliminate from the both of those reference files all of these fields that we're not using. So in the output here, not on the input because you're using it in calculations, but on the output here, I'm going to eliminate the last name, first name, middle initial. Also over here, I'm going to, in the output, well, in fact, now I have to do it in the input too, because I eliminated it from the table that's coming in. So I'm going to delete the last name, first name, middle initial. And once again, rerun all processes to produce our final physician reference tables that we'll use in future analyses. So this completes the setup of our reference and detail tables that we'll be using in some simple analyses in the next session.